The job market is tough, but it's going to be tougher to get a job, to get an interview, to get hired by anyone if you fail to understand some of the fundamentals I'm going to share in this video. By the way, my name is Anthony, and like I always say, we have more videos coming your way, so if you haven't subscribed yet, do so, because a lot of great content is coming your way. All right, let's go right into the video now. Alright guys, let's get straight into the video. I'm hoping that this will be a very insightful video for yourself if you're struggling to find work, if you are struggling to get interviews, if you're also struggling to sort of pivot or change in this season that we all find ourselves. Lots of good stuff that hopefully you can get out of this. Now, I've spoken to quite a number of recruiting agents, and it is very clear, whilst they're able to sort of find that there are roles that are coming into the market, and there's definitely some type of need for specific roles. It's quite clear that some roles are struggling in terms of the volume of requests for specific individuals, as it were. Let me just say, if you haven't followed our channel, I think I've already mentioned it, please follow it. There's a lot of beautiful things that are coming your way. We try our best to put at least one video a week. We're going to try and do two, and so you're going to learn quite a lot of stuff here. But yeah, this is exactly why you're not getting hired. This is what nobody's telling you. Hopefully you get some good insights from it. Okay, now let me say this, right, that the reality is people are struggling to find work. And so the question would be, why? Right? Why is that the case? And it's obvious, right? There's not enough work. Companies are going bust. There's a lot of people in the market for specific roles, and the list goes on. But then if you start sort of getting to the root of it, and if you start doing some root analysis, as it were, you would really get to why this is really happening. And I hope that in helping you to sort of see the real root causes of issues, I can really help you better position yourself. Now, life is in seasons, right? That's the first place that we need to start. Life is in seasons. It's the history of humanity to sort of see ourselves move from one season to another. We have seasons of plenty, and then we go to seasons of not plenty, seasons of abundance, then we're back to seasons of famine. And each of them have direct implication in terms of how it affects employability or the employment rate and people's ability to sort of be employed, etc., etc. And as it were, in seasons of plenty, we have more, people are less, people invest more, right? People are not, there's investments, there's free flow of cash. People take more risks, right? They're not risk averse, as it were. And so there's more innovation, expansion, and then disruptive technologies, etc., etc. There's growth, right? There's expansion. That's the sort of the general idea. Now that has direct implication in terms of how many people get employed, because ultimately, if this company is seeking to grow, then naturally it affects the other companies, and so you have this dominoes effect of the supply chains and sort of the connection between all different companies, and giving countries, as it were, begin to see a blossom, as it because generally there's a fate that things are going to get better, we're going to grow, as it were. But then that is overthrown, as it were, by seasons of not plenty. And here the emphasis is on fear, right? People will have much more fear in what the future holds, and so they are more risk averse. They take less risks. There's a slowdown and begin to sort of go into seasons of crisis. But if the focus and the emphasis becomes efficiency, stability, compliance, security. Let's just make sure we can keep things sort of going. Let's keep the boat afloat. Let's just get the business as usual to be going on. There's no investment in new contracts, new projects. And so that again has direct implication in terms of how many people get employed, right? The employment rate begins to sort of decrease. The inflation is rising. The cost of borrowing for growth now, is through the roof, etc., etc. So there's in each season, as it were, you find that there are different emphasis for organizations and for individuals, for hiring managers, etc., etc. And that's very critical, because the season that we are in will determine the kind of employment landscape that we find ourselves. So if somebody says, "Oh, the employment world is cooked," well, why? Because we are in a specific season, and that's very, very important. I would like to say that we are in a season of not plenty, right? A season of famine, as it were. But At the same time, we're experiencing a pivotal change, a climax of the technological advancements, that it were, and the introduction of artificial intelligence or automation, robotics. But it hasn't sort of taken over the entire world, as it were, right? It's still within a specific nucleus, group of people, group of individuals. There's still the direct impact, as it were, has not been felt. And so even though we're seeing billions and billions and trillions of dollars and pounds being pumped into this area of AI and this sort of group, as it were, within the world, it hasn't translated into a wider opportunity gap, as it were, for everybody. Right. So generally it's a season of non-plenty, but within that season, there is a group, or there is a cluster of or domain, as it were, that is experiencing boom. But from a general perspective, it's a season of not plenty. Okay, so why am I saying that? Because what I don't want you to do is to think that because of the advancement and investment in AI, then everybody else is going to do well. No, that's not the reality. The reality is that those that are in AI are incredibly having the best time of their life, right? Because there's so much money in that space, right? The top trending technologies of today. But at a fundamental level, if you look at just, the average person's life and what is really happening, people are really, experiencing some difficulties in getting a job. Okay, so that's where we start from. The seasons that we find ourselves, that's determining a lot of things. Okay, now let's look at some characteristics. So like I said, in seasons of plenty, right? There's fast hiring, experimental mindset. It doesn't matter, bring them in, we will train them. If they're not good enough, we'll get rid of them. We've got enough money, etc., etc. There's higher budgets for tech, for R&D, and for redesign of services, and the appetite for risk and big wins is a lot higher, right? People have faith in seasons of plenty. There's generally a feel of faith and courage, and it's going to work. Even if it doesn't work, there's just an aura of faith that drives a lot of human decisions, right? So hiring becomes something that is normal. Then you have seasons of not plenty, and generally people are very cautious in hiring. There's a lot at stake because you need one person to be able to provide value. So your decisions, you think a lot more about your decisions, right? It's a value-led decision exercise that you do. You don't just hire anybody. That's why you're finding that 400 people send a CV out there, and they're taking so much time and going through different routes and different sort of interview stages and steps. The reality is they need to be cautious. We don't have enough money, and we need to get the best person to do the job, right? There's generally a focus on survival, right? Companies focus on what they need instead of what they want, right? And then there's investment in ensuring that the businesses that they are doing is compliant, because that's the only time they will lose money. If they're not compliant and they're audited, and eventually they're fined. So there's more investment, if at all. There's the major investment is looking at compliance or compliance related projects or contracts, etc., because if you want to keep afloat, what you don't want to do is that in the process of keeping afloat, you neglect the legal ramifications or the legal requirements that your business or organization might have. Businesses focus more on maintenance instead of building new projects, right? So operations, maintenance, and business as usual. And here the emphasis is on doing more with less, not doing more with what we have, but doing more with less, right? So we need to shrink and get more people, few people to do a lot more. So that's why we're looking for individuals that have multiple skills, because we can get them to do more. That's the sort of characteristics of that season. So what are the industries? Now, let's say this, right? So with that understanding, we should ultimately kind of conclude that there's some industries that, depending on the season that we find ourselves in, will grow, or will continue to hire, or will not have the capacity to grow, and therefore will not continue to hire. Right. So in seasons of plenty, we see a lot of tech startups, lots of, fintech, cryptocurrency, because people are buying more there's more investment in new construction projects, real estate development, marketing and advertisement, because everybody wants to grow. Luxury is a concept in this world, lifestyle, travel, hospitality, venue capital, private equity. There's high investment and appetite for innovation. Consumer and confidence is rising. Disposable income is available. People can, invest more. People can buy things. So generally, there's a certain kind of lifestyle that is needed and it's possible within seasons of plenty. But in seasons of non-plenty or famine, as it were, we go back, we revert to what is important, right? No matter the economy, people's health has to be kept, in order. We need energy. We need utility. We need to have our lights on. We need to make sure that we can turn our gases and ACs and whatever. Those basic necessities of life becomes very fundamental. Government and public sector, government institutions, that local governments, for example, that are involved in public service, particularly maybe housing or maybe public health, or those amenities and resources that are required to actually get the community and the society to keep moving, as it were, they're still in place. But even within these institutions, within the healthcare, utilities, government, education, whatever, they are going to also reprioritize what is important. They're going to look at projects that are compliance related. They're going to cut down on any sort of ambitious growth exercises out there, and they'll focus on business as usual, operation, maintenance, etc., etc. Education and education technology. That's also something very critical in seasons of not plenty, right? Fast moving consumer goods, cybersecurity in a world that is governed by technology, and the bedrock of it is tech. You need to be able to manage the sort of security infrastructure that runs the entire world, and then insurance and claim services, because as usual, that's going to be the case. Now, that's very important. Right? What industries do well in seasons of plenty versus what industries don't do well in seasons of not plenty. If you are, working in maybe the luxury retail or lifestyle and you're struggling to find work, you've got to understand that this is the reality, right? It is a fact that you're going to struggle to find work. They will be cutting down on these industries because people don't have money to buy and sort of support that type of business right now. People are saving. Now, the fact is, the money in this world has not left. It's still here. But people are conserving their money, they're saving it because they are concerned that something might happen. And if it does happen, what do they do? Kind of thing, right? So, begin to look at yourself and ask yourself, okay, I'm in this industry, right? Maybe I'm in construction. I've worked in construction. There's been, over the last couple of years, investment in building new projects, but gradually I'm seeing a decline in the number of projects that are coming in. Well, there's going to be an emphasis, a shift from new build, new development now to aftercare, to maintenance, to supporting these new buildings. There's going to be an emphasis, and businesses will shift that money, the budget allocation, from new builds to now ensuring that we can get the buildings maintained, the buildings sustained, the buildings operating in a functional way, whilst we weather the storm and get back to a place of consumer confidence to rising to facilitate growth and stuff, right? Travel and hospitality. People are not traveling as much because they don't have enough money to be able to travel as much as they want, right? And then venture capital and private equity. It is what it is, right? There's less investment because people don't have. I mean, even if you have new ideas, you can't really warrant that you're going to get sales, and therefore there is not that sort of confidence in businesses doing well. So, a lot of questions that you need to ask yourself. Which industry are you in? Which sectors are you in? Even the jobs, the companies that you are in, what's the kind of focus that they have, as it were? So industries play a key role, and you need to ask yourself which industry you are in to be able to understand whether or not you need to pivot or not. What about jobs? There are roles that also grow in seasons of boom versus seasons of bust, right? In seasons of plenty, we are developing new projects. We need project managers. We need, machine learning and data analysts and data science engineers that's going to predict the future, this, that, cloud architects, because there's more investment in going to the cloud and this and that, UX, UI designers, digital transformation, growth marketing specialists. Now, all of these roles, let me say this, by no means am I saying that you wouldn't find a job with these kind of titles right now. No, they're still available. They're still present. But the problem is that the number of jobs that carry these titles have decreased. Remember, we said in seasons of non-plenty, we're doing more with less, right? Secondly, we are not investing in new things. If you're not investing in new things, then when your contract ends, what are you going to do? Right? Companies are not just going to keep you around just because they need to have somebody there. All right. And then seasons of non-plenty, right? You can clearly see operations manager, right? Business as usual project manager, process improvement leads. The emphasis has shifted from innovation and growth to now business as usual improvement, maximizing what we have, making what we have efficient and effective. So those kind of people with those skill sets are needed in this type of society right now. Data analysts and performance officers, data analysts are critically needed. They may not, your role might not just be data analyst. You might be a project manager or process improvement lead, but you have data analysis as a skill set. So it's very hard for them to get rid of you. Cybersecurity analysts, compliance officers, DevSecOps, right? Security engineers, some of them, depending on what area, right? Asset managers, people that are managing specific assets. Housing is one of them. Different kinds of technology assets. PMO analyst, governance lead. You can sort of see there is a disparity between the roles that are needed in seasons of plenty and seasons of non-plenty. Now, somebody might say, well, AI and machine learning engineers are needed in this particular society. Well, it's because there's a nucleus of domain within our world today that is championing artificial intelligence, automation, etc., etc. But that is a very closed community. It's a very, very closed community. And whilst that sort of warrants the notion that, yes, data analysts and machine learning engineers are needed, you have to realize that it's not like everybody is looking for AI engineers and data analysts. No, that world, within the world we're in, is where there is a requirement for these specific individuals. The average company out there is not looking for an AI engineer or machine learning or data scientist. It's not. They probably use the tools that are built by these individuals. Okay, so understand the fundamentals that I'm trying to communicate to you here, right? So there are roles that are needed in the community that we are now, in the season that we're in now. There are industries and there are priorities that organizations might have. There are jobs that they're going to focus on. And if you have positioned yourself as an individual that is very useful within the seasons of plenty, then you need to rethink about how you reprioritize yourself, repackage yourself, as it were, and go and look for those specific jobs within those specific industries that quite honestly are needed and are sort of okay and thriving in this particular season that we find ourselves. So where are we now? In conclusion, we are in a season of famine and non-plenty. And so you need to rightly position, rightly align yourself. You have to think about so many different things. I don't know what that means to you to know that we're in a season of famine and plenty. If you happen to be working in some type of AI world or AI, whatever, you probably wouldn't agree with a lot of the things that I'm saying here, because that world is seeing huge investments, and the salaries that people are getting and the opportunities and the number of jobs that is coming, seems to give you a false idea that this is the reality for everybody out there. No. In that world, there's a lot of investments, there's great jobs, there's great offers, etc., etc. But outside of that world, the general populace of the world is in a season of famine, in a season where people are less, they're taking less risk, they are more risk averse, they're investing less, right? There's generally a fear of the future, and so people are not necessarily sort of investing, buying. The cost of goods are rising, inflation is high, cost of borrowing is high, so companies are not investing in new things. The general focus is not on innovation, growth, expansion, and all the beautiful things that we see in seasons of plenty. Okay, so what's really happening then? Well, CEOs are facing new challenges due to rising cost of goods, supply chain disruptions, wars, increasing borrowing costs, post-COVID inflation, right? Rising public debts, market uncertainty are influencing business strategies. And then companies are being forced to rethink their investment and expansion plans. Like I said, right? Companies right now are not investing majorly in new projects. You would see major projects in the world of AI, et cetera, or companies that are directly involved with the sort of the new trends that is happening in the AI and sort of the top trending technologies of this world. But on a larger scale, that's not really what's happening. On a larger scale, companies are rethinking and reprioritizing and sort of determining what is necessary right now. And like I said, it's business as usual, security, compliance, maintaining the current operations and making sure that things operate and things are maintained correctly. And that, this has direct implications, right? So I've talked about businesses are struggling to secure new contracts due to economic instability. Some companies are investing in AI automation and emerging technologies while others are going bankrupt. This shift affects the number and types of jobs opportunities that are available, right? So everything that I'm saying in a nutshell is literally that the changes in the society, the AI, right, is playing a key role. The sort of the season that we find ourselves, all of this means that the types of jobs that are available are different from what it used to be 5, 6, 7 months, 2 years ago, right? It's a fact, right? And so you need to do something about it, right? Because the reality of hiring now is that as business restructure, hiring priorities have changed. Right? Companies are now focusing on strategic hires, candidates who drive efficiency. Innovation here, you have to qualify innovation. Innovation in efficiency, not innovation in like building new major things. Profitability, helping companies get more money, right? Because it's difficult to get more money now, right? The demand for traditional roles is also shrinking, while new roles in AI and data automation is also growing. Right? The cost of hiring and resourcing decision. Given financial pressures, companies are cautious about hiring. Employers now prioritize multi-skilled professionals who can wear multiple hats. I've said this multiple times. Companies want to do more with less now. So the more skills you have, the better it is for them to keep you around. Hiring mistakes are costlier than ever, right? Making competition for jobs more intense. They have to make value-driven decisions when hiring people. This is why you have to jump through so many hoops and so many whatever. And it's a fact. It's harder. It's harder to get a job, right? Because of what I'm sharing with you now. Okay. So very key insights here. Key insights number one, in seasons of plenty, we need builders and visionaries, and these people are the ones that thrive. In seasons of non-plenty, we need stewards and problem solvers. They are the ones that thrive. Right? In boom times, visionary builders lead the change. In slow down, we need optimizers, protectors, and enablers in our society. So what should you do? Well, build hybrid skills that allows you to pivot when the seasons of plenty comes, and then also allows you to sort of pivot when the seasons of slow down comes. So what should you do in simple terms? Hey, if you were, for example, a project manager that looked at new constructions, et cetera, right? New development, new builds, new whatever. You've got to change your CV now to focus on, compliance related stuff and operations and maintenance. You have to change it. You've got to change what you do and how you do. You have to reposition yourself to tell the markets that you have what they are looking for. If not, and you stay put and say, I'm going to find a job, it means that you are failing to understand the context that you find yourself in right now. And the environment, the context, the season that we're in is playing out who is relevant and who is needed. After all, it's a market. The market plays a key role in telling you, hey, we need this person. And you're saying, no. I have these skill sets and I'm struggling to find these jobs. Well, the market is saying we need this. So either you have it or you stay unemployed for a very long time. So the reason why most of you are failing to find jobs is because you are failing to understand that this is the season that we find ourselves in. If you want to find a job, you need to pivot and change into becoming what the world needs right now. Maybe a couple of years from now, 2, 3, 4 years from now, or a couple, I've spoken to some agents, they're saying that, look, things are beginning to change. The reality is we don't know how long it's going to take for us to get into that place of confidence yet. But the cycle is always the same. Seasons of plenty, seasons of, famine. We're going to go back. The question is when. Before we get there, make sure that you are in the right position. Thank you very much, guys. I hope this helps you. All the best. Bye-bye.